Welcome to all. We are discussing about the different perspectives in child development. We cannot rely upon one perspective. Hence, it is necessary to be aware about the different perspectives in child development. Now we are going to discuss about Sociocultural perspective in child development and its educational implication. In this video, we will discuss the main points such as sociocultural theorist view of child development, concepts of psychological tools or cultural tools, mediator and zone of proximal development, Vygotsky and language. After completion of this video, you should be able to develop understanding about the view of sociocultural theories towards child development, to define concepts such as psychological tools, mediator and zone of proximal development, to analyze the role of language in cognitive development. Let us first discuss about Sociocultural perspective. Sociocultural perspective in child development was developed by Love S. Vygotsky. It describes learning as a social process and the origination of human intelligence in society or culture. When we look at this theory, we can state that Vygotsky emphasizes the role of community in the development of a child. So, the child alone or his intelligence or her intelligence alone is not essential for the developmental process, but the society plays a major role. So, the child's thinking process is always influenced by the society where he or she lives. When we look at Piaget's theory, he emphasized intelligence in the cognitive development of the child. Whether it is the normal development or the cognitive development, Vygotsky is of the view that society or culture play an important role. Sociocultural theories see cognitive development very differently. They always state that it is inseparable from culture. When we look at Vygotsky's theory, though we are mentioning about child development, his theory is always linked with cognitive development. Vygotsky developed a socio-cultural approach to cognitive development. The major theme of Vygotsky's theoretical framework is that social interaction plays a fundamental role in the development of cognition. This theory places the individual at the center of socio-cultural activities and regards interaction with others and cultural tools as essential to the development of cognition. And when the child is interacting in society, some kind of action is taking place. The action is mediated and cannot be separated from the milieu in which it is carried out. And it was stated by Walsh, 1991. Mediation here means it is a main concept of the sociocultural theory, and where the mediation is happening in the mind. The mind is mediated. This means that the individual does not establish a direct relationship with the world, but that this relationship is mediated through the use of tools. There are two types of mediator. One, human mediator. Number two, symbolic mediator. The role of human mediator is defined in Vygotsky's theory through the notion that Each psychological function appears twice in development, once in the form of actual interaction between people and the second time as an inner internalized form of this function. Coming to the symbolic mediator, the symbolic mediation refers to the external process via symbolic signs or tools in social context through which learner can control mental process after internalization. And here we can see that Vygotsky emphasizes the role of culture in cognitive development, as well as we can see in each culture the tools may be different. So the cultural tools means physical or psychological tools that facilitate learning. For example, books, language, etc. This theory is based on the concept that human activities take place in cultural context, are mediated by language and other symbol systems, and can be best understood when investigated in their historical development. This theory takes into account the broader context in which individuals live and develop and link these to the development of mind or cognition. Vygotsky's concept of environment extended beyond the physical context, and it also includes social and affective activity, products of cultural development such as speech and other symbol systems and social systems and formations. Vygotsky defined the environment not just as the external circumstances of a child's life, but as a context that included tools and cultural objects as well as people. He felt that the human environment is a social environment, that the child is a part of a living environment and that the environment is never external to the child. The social environment is transferred to a significant degree to within the child himself. So always we can see that though the child is living in an environment, as the society exerts greater pressure upon the development of the child. Let us see the characteristics of development and learning in the perspective of sociocultural theory. First one, we can see the interdependence of individual, interpersonal and community processes. Learning can be regarded as the changing participation in activities that lead to individual change. Knowledge is not static but arises as a consequence of cognitive transformation resulting from interaction. Next point, the distinction between competence and performance is not relevant in sociocultural theory. Sociocultural approach recognizes regularities in the structure of human activities. When the child or the individual is interacting with the society, he is using some tools for the task, doing some kind of task, and during that time we can see some kind of higher and lower mental functions. The lower or elementary mental functions are genetically inherited natural mental abilities. We may call it like that, the natural mental abilities. With regard to the higher mental functions, they develop through social interaction, being socially or culturally mediated. Hence, Vygotsky always stated that higher mental functions happen through the interaction of the child with society. And in this interaction, the child uses various tools, and more than that, the language occupies an important place. And when we think of these higher mental abilities, there again he stated about the psychological abilities. There we can see the two types of psychological abilities, intramental versus intermental. Every function in the child's cultural development appears twice, first on the social level and secondly at the individual level. At the social level, we can see that it occurs between individuals, that is interpsychological, and then inside the child, that is intrapsychological. This applies equally to voluntary attention, to logical memory and to the formulation of concepts. All the higher functions originate as actual relations between human individuals. Regarding the psychological tools, we can state that it enables us to bridge the gap between the lower and higher mental functions. These psychological tools include various systems for counting, mnemonic techniques, algebraic symbol systems, works of art, writing, schemes, diagrams, maps and technical drawings, all sorts of conventional signs and so on. Of the psychological tools that mediate our thoughts, feelings and behaviors, language is the most important. Hence, Vygotsky stated that language occupies an important place in the cognitive development of a child. When we look at Vygotsky and language, we can see that cognitive development results from an internalization of language. And regarding the language, Vygotsky divided it into three aspects. Number one, social speech, private speech and inner speech. When we look at the social speech, we can see that at the birth, there is no type of the social speech. So, it is internalizing by the age of 3 years and it is communicated with others. Then comes the private speech that also occurs between that 3 and 5 years like that, and there the child starts to speak to himself or herself. So, we can state that it is directed to self. Then comes the inner speech. And the inner speech, it is at the stage of 7 years or after the 7 years we can see the inner speech. And this inner speech is self-regulated. And when we look at the private speech and the inner speech, what we can see is that the private speech consists of the words, whereas the inner speech, instead of words, it transforms into thoughts. So, the verbal thoughts is coming. And here we can see that the inner speech is internalizing. We can see the external social speech which internalizes to the private speech, which later on internalizes to the inner speech. And we know that as the child is residing in society, the child is always communicating with others. And here Vygotsky emphasized two main principles. Number one, more knowledgeable other, MKO, and number two, zone of proximal development, ZPD. So, what is this sociocultural theory emphasize is that the child is always mediated by the social process where the child uses the cultural tools or the psychological tools in order to communicate with others, and where the abilities of the child will develop in communication with the more knowledgeable others, and with the support of them, the child is able to develop his mental capacities or his or her abilities. Let me discuss what is the term ZPD mean. The zone of proximal development is the range of potential each person has for learning, with that learning being shaped by the social environment in which it takes place. This potential ability is greater than the actual ability of the individual when the learning is facilitated by someone with greater expertise. And here the ZPD refers to the difference between what a learner can do without help and what he or she can achieve with guidance and encouragement from a skilled partner. Thus, the term proximal refers those skills that the learner is close to mastering. The distance between the actual developmental level as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers is known as the ZPD or the zone of proximal development. And through this ZPD, the child is able to do in collaboration today, where sometimes in today's task, the child is not able to do the task in a better way, but will be able to do independently tomorrow. Today, the child may be doing with collaboration, but tomorrow the child is able to do independently. That's the essence of ZPD. Again, I will reassert that what the child is able to do in collaboration today, he will be able to do independently tomorrow. And when we look at the context of zone of proximal development, there comes three contexts: developmental context, applied context and metaphoric context. Coming to the developmental context, in the developmental context, ZPD is used for explaining the emerging psychological functions of the child. As far as the applied context, it explains the difference between the child's individual and aided performances, both in situations of assessment and in classroom learning. Coming to the metaphoric space, it is the space where everyday concepts of the child meet scientific concepts provided by teachers or other mediators of learning. And here, when we look at the sociocultural theory put forward by Vygotsky, we can see that he always states that the social learning precedes development. Whereas in the case of Piaget, he stated that development precedes learning. So in that case, based on the ZPD, we can state that instruction should occur within the zone, effective teaching should be focused here, cognitive growth occurs here. And then comes the term scaffolding. When a teacher is aware of the abilities of a student and responds contingently to his or her responses so that the student eventually increases his or her understanding of the problem. Scaffolding is an instructional technique where the teacher provides the learner with just enough assistance for achievement of understanding. Students receive help that enables them to complete tasks that they cannot complete independently. Gradually, as the learner becomes more proficient, the scaffolding is removed. However, studies show that students do not learn as well when told everything to do, nor when left alone to discover on their own. Let us see the educational implications. That already I have stated that the development and the learning process is going side by side. So here Vygotsky stressed about the active learning, and a teacher should assess what they already know and establish what they are capable of learning, and this theory allowed teachers to teach within the zone, that is the Z period. It also allows to provide sufficient scaffolding for fostering growth and development. And here comes the importance of guided participation in classroom, where teachers structure learning activities, provide helpful hints or instruction, carefully tailored to child's abilities, monitor learners' progress, and gradually turning over more mental activity to the students. And in the classroom, it is necessary to provide cooperative learning environment. The teacher can design exercises where students are encouraged to help each other. Less competent students will benefit from this cooperative learning from the more competent peers. And teaching somebody something is the best way to solidify one's own knowledge. Problem solving skills advance when working together more than working alone. And here we can see the references: Vygotsky, Ellis, Mind in Society, Rush JV's Voices of the Mind, a Sociocultural Approach to Mediated Action, and National Research Council, How People Learn, Brain, Mind, Experience and School. So, these references are very good for you to follow. And in this video, we have discussed the socio-cultural theories view of child development, concepts of psychological tools or cultural tools, mediator and zone of proximal development, and Vygotsky and language.